Hello everybody, it's New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day, depending on when you watch it. It's Full Time Devils. Today I'm joined by Jay and I am joined by Rachel. And we're no longer saying the Manchester reporter for Q103 because Jay's moved on to pastures new and he can now slag City off and be actually normal for a change. Welcome, Jay. We finally got the real you on here, haven't we?
Introduction. That was lovely, that.
No problem. And we got Rachel as well. You should
You
go
can
watch
officially-
Rachel's fan cam. Oh, go on, what? What do you want?
You can officially say Happy New Year to everybody, but you can exclude the City fans because you no longer have to be unbiased.
This is it. I can just say what I want now, yeah. So I hope City have a horrible New Year. But I'm sure they won't.
I'm sure they won't. I'm sure they won't. But can I just put it on record that if they balls it up from here, I am going to laugh for 8 months. Solid. Without even taking a breath.
But the thing is, I'm not even going to respond to that because they're not going to balls it up.
They're not.
Even
Just the next 6 games
little
on the shop,
caveat in.
we'd still
if they
lose.
do, I'm going to take the piss forever. All right? Okay,
Yeah,
so
I love
things
it.
we're
I
going
love
to
it
talk
if you
about
beat
today. We're going to talk about form. Not very good, is it? We're going to talk about strikers because, well, our two main ones are injured. We're going to do team predictions. We're going to do what we know about Everton, and then we're going to do our score predictions, which we're all going to get horribly wrong. And then we're going to wrap it up. We're also going to talk to the comments. We're going to see what some of you guys are saying. It's quite vitriolic after yesterday. Some parts understandably, some of it not quite so understandably. But let's get straight into it and let's talk about form. Jay, how bad is our form at the moment? Is it more than a blip? Is it just proper cack at the minute?
I think at the minute you can look at it as, for me personally, it's a blip. I don't think that the wheels have completely come off the way that some people are saying. Yes, it's been disappointing. You know, you look at obviously the Bristol City game, the draws that we've had, but I think it's one of those sort of times where you can often have a bit of a few disappointing results. We've seen it in the past, not just under the likes of Moyes and Van Gaal, but even under Fergie. And I think that's why this Everton game has sort of an added meaning because this is the perfect chance to bounce back. You know, 3 draws on the spin isn't great when you look at the quality of opposition. You know, we should have been beating all them teams really, especially under the circumstances with the Leicester game in particular. But I think we get a result against Everton, and you can just put it down to a slight blip rather than the wheels have come off. But if we have another draw against Everton or even a loss, then people are going to start asking some real questions because you know we're already having the mutterings, aren't we, about whether Mourinho's the right man for the job? Admittedly, more by the press than by the fans.
Yeah, and actually, on the press last night, Martin Keown on BT went in two-footed.
Don't start me on him.
I think it's worth talking about because Martin Keown went in two-footed on Jose Mourinho yesterday. In there with Scholesy. I think Scholesy, bit of a representative of Fergie. Martin Keown, clearly a representative of the Wenger era. And he had the cheek to say Manchester United are about to go 5 years without winning a title. Are you kidding me?
Well, speaking as an Arsenal point of view, I'm sure he's got loads to gloat about on that front. Yeah, I mean, you look at how the club's been. We've been in transition even since Fergie left, and I think we need a bit of stability and just this merry-go-round of managers. It doesn't work. Yes, Chelsea have done it and had a little bit. Well, they've had a lot of success with it. It's worked for them. But other than that, I don't think it does. I think you need to stick with a manager who knows what he's doing, not a manager who doesn't. And for me, Mourinho knows what he's doing.
Rachel did a good fan cam yesterday, talking about inching up the hill. What do you put our poor form down to?
I mean, you say they're like, oh, the fans aren't hating on Jose just yet. And I'm like, oh, I did. Only a little bit, though. Only a little bit. Because I do agree with what Jay just said in the sense of people get annoyed with us, keep calling it like a transition season. But we're continuously transitioning because every time we change a manager, we're transitioning into like a new style of players, like people like to say. And I think that's where I'm probably starting to get a little bit reserved about Jose Mourinho. We need a plan. Like we are transitioning, and we need to transition into something that we're happy to be. Because at the moment, like I'm okay with us like backs against the wall defending if we need to for away against City. But like when we just can't cut through, because I think the issue we're having now is it's not players. We've got very good players, like all the way down the pitch. And like I said in my fan cam last night, like the reason I came out worried and frustrated because I believe a lot of those players would be playing better under a different manager or in a different team. So it's a bit frustrating really to think, like, where do you go from here? It's not like we have an injury crisis. I feel like we could turn it around on one game because we have got the quality in there. It's almost like the game plan, like not to keep going off on tangents, but like last night I feel like Jesse Lingard was told he was the one that had to press up the front. And I feel like that makes sense. He's got legs. He always gets subbed off, and he's got some legs, unlike the other 10 players. he was pressing the goalkeeper all night, but then it was only Jesse Lingard. Like, Paul Pogba actually would stop and tell him to press, and it was just a little bit frustrating because it didn't seem to make sense, because you can't do a press with just one player. Like, he needed some backup. So just to sum that all up, it's frustrating at the moment because I feel like we need a better game plan. And, like, yeah, I do agree that Jose Mourinho is a very good coach and that he is one of the best out there, and that's our struggle, to find a better coach. But I'm not fully happy with where we're transitioning at the moment, so I'm just a bit on the fence.
The weird thing is, going back to what you said there, Rachel, sorry to interrupt, Howson, you say about him not getting the best out of players. I think he's getting the best out of our lesser players in terms of, like, Valencia came on loads when Mourinho took over. Jones, you could argue, did. Young, you can argue, did. Even Lingard, you could argue, has. But then the likes of Rashford, the likes of Pogba, the likes of Martial, have they come on under Mourinho? Not really. In many cases, they're even going backwards. And that's the worrying thing. He's getting the best or better out of some of our lesser players, but the stars, if you will, the ones that you want you to win your games, they're not improving when we need them to. And that's, for me, the big difference between what we're doing and what's going on down the road.
Exactly, that's what I would say in terms of, like, if you actually took all the names out of it and just put forward the narrative of a manager comes in and makes the best of the players that aren't really that great, like, makes the best out of a bad situation. That's a manager lower down the league. Our manager's meant to come in and create, like, I don't know, something spectacular, and we're not doing that.
Right, the two major parts of what both of you are saying is stability and transition. That was the two key themes of what both of you are saying there. The argument that I see a lot of people saying when they try and back up, like, getting rid of managers constantly, is that it's worked for Real Madrid, it's worked for Chelsea. To a greater or lesser extent, Real Madrid are basically just breaking the world record anytime they want it for players. And Chelsea doing a similar sort of thing where Abramovich has just gone through that. Both of those clubs have got directors of football in place ahead over the manager. Now, the teams that I think that are doing that fairly successfully have got that in place. Manchester United don't have that in place, and for me, that could be one of the bigger things that we need to get in place. Is someone, you know, maybe Mourinho said, I ain't going to work with the director of football, but don't you think that should be the next appointment that we make, is a director of football, to have a longer term plan? Because it don't feel like Mourinho was a planned appointment.
I completely agree, mainly because if you use City as an example, I mean, that's getting a tired example, but their planning for Pep Guardiola stretched back a long time. Like, even like, not only had him signed up for the season he would start, but they brought Kevin De Bruyne in early. Like, maybe they did take a hit in the short term in the fact that they couldn't have a great manager because he was obviously going to get subbed out. But long-term planning has paid off massively for them. And you're right, it's a director of football that has the club's best interest at heart rather than their own that can do that.
I think the thing with City is as well, they work together, don't they? I can never pronounce his name, Howson. You know what I mean? The director. Thank you. And Guardiola, they've known each other for years. They obviously work in tandem. If you were to bring in a director of football now, for example, and say he's going to make the transfer decisions and work with you, Jose, you can see Jose just thinking, this is another Avram Grant at Chelsea sort of type thing. I'm not having any of it. So in the future, then maybe that could be a way forward. But I think with Mourinho, I think he's the sort of manager that wants to have a say over his transfers. So I wouldn't be looking, if we did bring in a director of football, I wouldn't be looking for them to be making the decisions on who we sign, maybe just helping to get the players that he's earmarked.
Well, I think it's a great, it's a bigger picture thing in terms of when you look at the owners as individuals and you look at what the Sheikhs have done at City. They've had this big vision project which they're implementing. At Manchester United, the big vision project is to take $1.5 billion out of the club and give it to the banks. That's what the Glazers have done. Now that $1.5 billion, can you imagine you had $1.5 billion extra to spend on Manchester United over the last 12 years? Can you imagine the position we'd be in? Can you imagine the Academy Stadium we'd have? Old Trafford would probably be in excess of 100,000. There would be ungodly changes that we would see at the club. We'd probably be looking at our 30th title coming up. There's the difference in how the owners at Manchester City have treated it and the owners at Manchester United have treated it. And it might not just be a director of football, but it's the director of football in tangent with the vision that those sheikhs have got for wanting to push City and the club's stature in world football, whereas ours seemingly just want to avoid confrontation and take as much money out of it as possible. Right, the next thing that we're going to talk about is strikers then, because we've had Marcus Rashford played on the wing, not doing very well. We've had Anthony Martial playing on the wing, dribbling just out of this world, but end product not quite there with him. Zlatan's out for another month. Lukaku, at least 2 games with the concussion that he's got. Who's going to play up front for us?
Well, we saw Rashford playing up front, didn't we, when Lukaku went off, and I don't think he had the best game against Southampton, to be completely honest. I was a bit disappointed in him, and he's someone I think is, I'm one of them people that think he is an actual striker. I prefer seeing him down the middle, but I know it's only one game, but I don't think he exactly shone. I think for the game coming up against Everton, I'd like to see Martial be given a start as a striker. I think we keep putting Martial and Rashford on the left wing, swapping them around. And it's not always working, and sometimes they look like they don't know where they are. They don't know that they're meant to go out wide, or they're meant to tuck in, they're meant to play just off the strike. At times, not all the time, it looks a bit messy. But I'd like to see Martial be given a chance, because I know he's not the same type of striker as a Lukaku or Ibrahimovic, but he's got his ability. We know he can finish. We know he can get in behind defenders. So yeah, for me, he's the obvious option. Rachel,
any issues with squad depth in the striking department, do you think?
No, I really don't agree with that. Mainly because we've got two exceptional, I'm not going to say world class, but two very good strikers already in the team that are injured, and that's unfortunate. And then we've got depth in the sense we've got Martial and Rashford that can sub in. Maybe it's not their usual place, but there's no way we're going to get a great striker that's better than those two into the squad to barely even sit on the bench. Like, we've already got enough backup in that area, and I don't think we'd be able to add anything better to the team. Like, our money's better spent on the defence, I think. But what I would say is, with Marcus Rashford or Anthony Martial, I think they're both having the same issue, in the sense that maybe it's because they've been on the wings, they're both great. Like, I think one thing Rashford was good yesterday was getting past a man, but both of them have had this issue in recent weeks where they just cannot get a shot off. They just will not shoot. They want to take another touch, and we haven't got time for that. I honestly think we would definitely have won last night if Marcus Rashford would have been playing with maybe what I don't know if I would call it confidence, or just with like more practice in the role. But he just needs to get that instinct back for goal. However, to get that back, to get them up to striker quality, I think they would need a run at centre forward. And in reality, Lukaku's only out for 2 weeks, so by the time they'd be getting into it, they'd be out again, back on the wing, because Lukaku is in fact better at centre forward. I think our biggest issue last night was the fact that I think it was quite obvious to see on the pitch that we don't really have anything on the right. It was ridiculous how much space Ashley Young... It was like they actually forgot he was there. He had so much space all night, but everything went down the left, because Lingard, when he's meant to be on the right, likes to cut into 10. And obviously Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial have spent so much time on the left that they seem to just be drawn there. So while our striker's out, I feel like we need to just focus on keeping width at the top of the pitch.
Jose mentioned previously that he didn't want to play two strikers when Zlatan was out, because Zlatan was out and he didn't have a striker on the bench. Do you think there's any possibility that we'll see Rashford and Martial play together in this game? Or do you think that Jose just has this need to have backup on the bench in case of an injury? What do you reckon, Jay?
I remember what you're saying about Jose. I think they could play together to give a sort of, sit on the fence a little bit. They could. I wouldn't have a problem if I saw Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial starting up front as part of the two. I don't think that's, the end of the world. I think they could work well together. But I don't think they will. I think he's going to pick one or the other. I think that moving forward, I know we're going to get onto Everton a bit later on, but I think in the Everton game, for example, I think he'll play Martial up top, maybe with Jesse or someone just off him. But I think if that is needed, yes, we could, because like Rachel was saying there, you have 4 strikers at a club. That's enough. Going back to 99, whenever, 4 strikers is always enough. And if any team lost 2 strikers, be that City, be Arsenal, whoever, Liverpool, they struggle. They wouldn't have many options left on the bench. So I think he will start with one. I also think he's been a bit sort of cautious with substitutions since Leicester as well, when we saw what happened to Smalling and we just didn't have that player to bring on because he used all his subs. I don't know if that's got in his head a little bit, because I've noticed he doesn't seem to be as gung-ho with substitutions. I know it's only been a few games, but he just seems to be a little bit reluctant to make all the substitutions he used to make prior to that game.
Right, we've got a couple of comments from y'all watching at home. Thank you for those. The first one is from Eminem Fan, which says, Pogba is like a gladiator, partly chained, because some games he's incredible, but for example, yesterday he was poor, mainly due to tactical deployment of him, something I've been banging about all season, but the next comment nails it as well. Pogba is too held back in attack, need him in attack. Scholesy nailed it yesterday in his analysis about Pogba. What he was saying, Scholesy, yesterday is that he thinks we need a Modric, a Cruz, a Pirlo, a Scholesy, someone that's going to actually dictate play and have Pogba as the number 8 or one of the number 8s doing the running. I absolutely agree, and it's pulling my hair out at the moment about how we need that midfield 3 over what I see as a midfield 2. When you play him in a midfield 2, you know, he lines up alongside Matic. He's much deeper. You can see it in my fan cam yesterday, what I wanted to say. So go and check those out. You can see mine, you can see Rachel's. Jay didn't bother coming out yesterday. He
Rude.
didn't fancy it.
Sorry, I was, scared of them Burnley fans coming back to beat me up.
Original Base says, we are not Madrid or Chelsea. Oh, thanks for that. I was really confused. I don't get that comment.
He's talking about changing managers.
All right. I believe he's talking about changing the managers. Yeah, you're right. Ghost Slayer says, play Marshall or Rashford down the middle. That's where they play their best. I don't see why LVG or Mourinho have kept them in a weaker position. On this, I mean, Jay, you mentioned it a second ago as well, that they don't really know what they're doing. Rashford did play down the middle in the academy, but he was very often played on that left-hand side of like a 4-2-3-1. And Martial played all of his best football at Monaco on that left-hand side. This is where these players have come up playing. It's not like Mourinho's seen them and gone, let's try you on the left. That's literally where they've spent most of their careers. So, yes, they can play down the middle, but actually they've spent more of their time on that left-hand side.
I see what you're saying. I know, especially Martial, when he came into the side as well, he was very effective there. I just think recently it has looked a bit messy. It hasn't, you know, they don't look confident. They don't look like... There's at times when, you know, Ashley Young, when he's on that left, and we've seen him on the left, he doesn't like to always get forward as much. Sometimes he does, but especially in the derby, for example, where he's a bit reluctant to commit himself. And then you need one of your strikers who is on the left, or one of your forward players who is meant to be on that left position, to go a bit further out wide at times. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There just seems to be an element of confusion. And I think, I hate to keep bringing up City, but we have to admit that they're flying, and they're flying for a reason. Guardiola worked with players like Sterling, and he said, like, this is what I want you to do. This is what, you know, you should be doing. Work with players like Sane. And I think that with a little bit more of that, with the likes of Rashford and Martial, we can get more out of them. Because I think no matter what, we can all agree, they are playing within themselves a little bit. There is a level that they can go up. You know, Rachel mentioned then about the finishing or whatever. I think it does boil down to confidence. I think you're right. I think that, you know, you see the likes of Kane, get it out your feet, and then it's a shot. With Rashford, it's like 2 or 3 touches to get it out of his feet. The same Martial, that shouldn't be happening. It should be 1 touch, or not even, the first touch should be a shot. So I think there is an element of, let's work with these players. They're still young. It's not like they're the finished article. I think if we did that, we'd see a lot more from them.
Yeah, I'd love to see Luke Shaw develop a partnership on that left-hand side with one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh. I'm a fan of Luke Shaw.
What was that all about then?
See it kicking off here now.
I got flashbacks to last night. I got flashbacks. Oh, like, I feel like he started well. Like, I've been on a bit of a hate train for Luke Shaw. And, like, I'm slowly getting off it, because I get frustrated with him, because I feel like he's the opposite of a Jesse Lingard. Like, Jesse Lingard goes out and puts his all into a game, and I feel like Luke Shaw's a little bit spoiled sometimes. But that's harsh, and I know that. And he started off well, and I was like, no, come on, I can come around. And I really don't think he ended the game well. So that was just a bit of a flashback. But on what Jay was saying before, like, I do really agree in the point of, but I think it is them on the wing. I don't know, like, from my personal opinion, I feel like they both suit being a winger a little bit better. My only issue is, my hope is that we eventually get to a point where, look, I've been looking at the guess the starting 11 statistics, and opponents always get better than us because they have a set starting 11. And I want a set starting 11, but I feel like that'll be hard to do if we have 2 left wingers, and I really like both of them.
And yeah. Right, we're going to go to a 30-second advert.
Thanks for that, Howson.
Boom, there you go, 30-second advert. Oh, no, you don't get analysis like this anywhere else. We're going to hit that starting 11 game right now, and we're going to go with Jay first. What is your guesstimated starting 11 for this is my the Everton game?
Guesstimate, I think he's going to go, this sounds a bit convoluted, it's more like a 3-5-1-1.
He's playing for points.
Right, so at the back 3, I've gone Lindelof, Rojo and Jones. Then on the left-hand side, I've got Shaw. On the right-hand side, I've got Young. In the middle, I've got Matic, Herrera and Pogba. And then I've got Martial up front with Lingard just off him. That's my predicted starting lineup.
I could get behind that sort of formation because it's got that 3-man midfield, which I really want to see us do. Because I think we get overrun in midfield. That's one of the major reasons. We don't own midfield in games. If you own the midfield, you can start attacking, can't you? You don't own the midfield. Yeah. So many times you see just a massive especially where I stand in the Stretford end, that you have like a real tactical view of the pitch because you're high up and you're at the long end of it. And you can see there's just massive areas of the pitch with no red shirts in. And it's usually the middle of the pitch. And like, we used to own that. You should always own the centre of the pitch and work out from there. And it seems like
I thought we were going to have that with Matic, beginning of the season. I know I did. He seemed to sort of take control of the games from the middle.
The three we had last season was so good. You put Matic in where Carrick was. Herrera was fantastic last season. Pogba was fantastic. Carry on as you were. Didn't work like that. Right, Rachel, what are you going with? What's your guesstimated 11?
Yeah, I find it weird that we haven't stuck with Herrera because I don't he's not been maybe the spark he was last season, but I think he's actually missing in that. Spoiler alert, I've put him in a midfield 3. I put De Gea in net. I went with a back 4 because I don't really know if we'll need a 3 against Everton, but we'll see. I've gone Young, Phil Jones, Rojo, and Blind. And then I went Matic, Pogba, Herrera. And then I actually went Lingard, Martial, and Rashford. Just because, maybe that's a hope more than anything else. I like the idea of them both starting together. Watching them, that 3 last night was slightly frustrating in the sense that I do feel like they just all congregate a little bit. Like I feel like they all need to keep the width.
I thought you cut out then, but you just stopped talking. All right, cheers. Let's talk about Everton. So Big Sam came in. He had a couple of banging results, starting with a draw at Liverpool. They've started to hit a bit of a 0-0 patch, and then obviously slipped to Bournemouth recently as well. How would you see us lining up? What do you see them offering us in terms of a threat, Jay?
I couldn't think of the worst game really. Well, I could obviously, it could be City away, but in terms of you want to win, you don't want to draw, and you've got Allardyce away. And he's got quite a good record against Mourinho. He likes to frustrate Mourinho's sides. He sort of brags about it when he gets a 0-0 against Jose. And that's what worries me because we're sort of desperate for a win to get us going again. And we're going to Goodison, which isn't the easiest ground anyway, to a manager who's renowned for being able to stifle teams. And as you just mentioned, he's coming off the back of a bad result as well. So I expect it to be a sort of a tight game. I expect him to pack that midfield. That's why I was sort of looking for United to do the same, and I think we will. You look at the Everton team, and the obvious name that you're going to think of, someone who's going to pop up and come back to haunt us, has got to be Rooney, hasn't it? I think I look at most of their players, and I'm not impressed if I'm being honest. Likes of Calvert-Lewin, they might be great. I don't know a lot about them. From what I've seen, they didn't look that great earlier on in the season. Sigurdsson, I thought, was probably the most expensive, one of the biggest sort of waste of 50 million I can think of in recent memory. From what I've seen so far. I just think it could be one of those games where Rooney haunts us. Hopefully, I'm wrong. I think it is going to be a tight game. I'm going to go with 1-0 United, although part of me thinks it's going to be another draw.
Producer Chris reckons Rooney's going to wake up in his Everton pyjamas tomorrow, absolutely gagging to get stuck into us. That's a direct quote. Rachel, what should we be looking out for against Everton?
Rooney. I think that's the one word. I remember when Sam Allardyce had that 5-day stint as England manager. I remember one quote he gave,
Best
which
England
I was
ever.
fuming at, was Wayne Rooney can play wherever he wants to, basically, when he was asked should he play midfield or whatever. And I just feel like that's what he's going to do tomorrow. I feel like he's going to set his team up. Rooney's this big ball of, we love Everton. And he's just going to come and he's going to set him up to score a hat-trick. And
what's Rooney like again?
I'm worried. We love Everton. That's the chant.
That's a proper chant, that.
Yeah, it's all right, guys. Actually. Everton, you can thank me later. But right now, I honestly, he's going to love it. If you can argue whether he's a legend at Man United or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I think everybody has to admit that he's always loved Everton more. He's going to come and he's going to want to kind of stick his fingers up to Jose, kind of been I'm too good for you. I'm actually really worried. I'm going to say 2-1 because the score prediction means nothing. So I'm just going to put it out there, a nice classic, hope for the best. But I think Rooney's...
Don't be jumping ahead. We haven't finished with this segment yet.
I'm just following Jay. I let Jay...
Sorry, I jumped the gun then, so I didn't realise we weren't allowed to do our predictions. That's my fault.
I'm an underrated player. I actually think that they've got a very solid team, and they just haven't got a number 9, because they sold him was.
Yeah.
And I think that if they had someone who could score goals, Cassandro... I've tried to be kind, and the only word I can come up with is shite. He's just rubbish. And I hope I've not jinxed him into scoring us. But luckily, football doesn't actually work like that. So I'm a big fan of Tom Davies. I think he's an absolutely belting player.
I hate his hair.
I can't stand him though, with his socks rolled down his shin pads.
All right, Grandad.
And his long hair.
Yeah,
And
he's
his
just a
flash
bit
boots.
irritating,
Who
isn't
does he
he?
think he is?
Oh,
No, another talking
I
of.
think
I do like
Good.
Balassi though. I know he's dead inconsistent, but he's one of them players that when he's on form, he's just exciting to watch. So
I haven't noticed Balassi since he came back from injury. Like I remember he was great, and then he was injured,
Yeah.
and
Been out
then he
for a
just
year,
faded
hasn't he?
into the background for
Been a
me.
year he's been out with. Been out for
Sorry?
a long old time, I think. Is it a year? that
Yeah, I
been
think
out
he's
with?
just come back. He's one of them players that when he's awful, he's really awful. He's a bit like Nani. But when he's great, he's exciting to watch.
It's a great analogy. Nani. What might have been, eh? There was something I was talking about with Nani the other day. I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, let's move on.
Great
Score
story,
predictions. Give us a full score prediction. How's it going to go down? Who's going to score first? All that caper, Rachel.
Who's going to go first? Rooney, 1, and then we're going to come back after half time. Jose's going to revitalise us, and we're going to win 2-1 from a Jesse Lingard double.
Ooh. Jay.
Heard it here first.
I'm going to go a scrappy 1-0, and I think I'm going to go with Pogba getting a goal.
I'm going to also say 1-0, and I think Anthony Martial is going to score somehow. I don't know how. I don't even care how. Do you know what? I hope it's Ashley Williams' own goal. How about that? Right?
Howson, do you even like football anymore?
Nope. I've never liked football. I only do it to be YouTube famous. Right. Anyway, thank you guys for joining in. Thanks for you guys at home for all your questions. Go give Rachel and Jay a follow on Twitter. I think they're
Happy New Year!
Either. Oh, behave. Happy New Year from me.
And me?
Thanks, Howson. Happy New Year, everyone.
And hopefully we get a win to start the new year off on the right foot because it's ended absolutely gash, hasn't it? We'll see you in the next one. Laters.